I got no slides. Just me. I was thinking about this morning, I'm on California time, and I'm a father of a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old. I got going a little late in life, and I had some fun last night. I sang a little karaoke, and then was told I had to be here at 9. And it was funny because that's 6 o'clock our time. So I came rushing over here, and they go, no, you don't have to be here until 10:30. And so I thought I'd do when you always come to these things, there's always that uncomfortable moment when people are doing their slides. So I was going to use somebody's laptop and put it up here. I'm not going to do it because it's too mean, but I'm going to explain what I was going to do. And then I was going, okay, can I have my slides? And then watch all these guys in the headsets run around. My slides? Can somebody do my slides? And then I was going to throw down the clicker and go, God damn it, this would never happen at TED, and rush out of here. And that would be like, I thought this was pop tech. But I won't do that, so I'm not going to do that. But anyway. And of course, in Camden is where you come to talk about the revolution, right? And but this is what we're here to talk about. And public education in America, it's interesting because I'm not an educator. In fact, I went to Cupertino High School in the Bay Area, and I'm the class of 1977. And that was the last year in California. We had the fully funded, best, #1 in the country education system there was. And the idea was if you had really smart people and you paid for it, you'd attract high-end jobs. That's why there's a Silicon Valley where I grew up, and aerospace industry and defense industry in Southern California. It's not because engineers like to surf. We just had really good schools at that time. And in fact, the high school I went to, it was my mom, who was a single mom who was a waitress, moved my little brother and I 7 blocks from San Jose schools to Cupertino schools so that I could go to school with the sons and daughters of Hewlett-Packard engineers. And we used to laugh at kids that went to private school. If you went to private school, that meant you needed some structure and your daddy needed to discipline you a bit. Because we were a little bit brainwashed. And one of my classmates, 2 years ahead of me, right down the street in a garage, another guy named Steve and another guy named Steve went in a garage and created this company, you know. That was the culture of public education. And I was able to jump a class because of those schools. A son of a waitress could do that. And in my adult lifetime, our schools went from the best to the worst in California. The best to the worst in those 30 years. And what passed as debate was the left, which I'm a member of, saying, just give more money. It's all about money. More money for a failed centralized system that was built for a manufacturing society. And the right, you know, disinterested, blame the teachers' unions, or indifference. And that's really what passes debate. So I was involved in politics most of my adult life, and trying to find virtue in politics is a little tough sometimes. But I thought about it, you know, and about 10 years ago, or I'm sorry, 12 years ago, I had this great life, and some horrible things happened. We all go through it. Deaths kind of come in bunches. I lost a younger brother. And then 2 years after that, I lost a mother. And we had a very small family, and that was basically my family. So I did a lot of took a lot of stock in my life. What am I doing? Am I really making an impact? And then I was haunted by losing a younger brother who was raised by the same mom. And I thought about that high school I went to. Well, that high school was great for me because I could shoot 3-pointers. And they used to tell you in that high school, even as much money as we were spending, 20% of you are going to go into college and do great things. 20% of you we can't do anything for. And the vast majority, as long as you can read or write, you're going to have jobs, and you're going to be able to buy a house, and you're going to be able to send your kids to college. But there's jobs there. Well, we still run our high schools the same way, 30 years later, with a lot less money. And most people that look like the people in this room have fled the system. And so what's left is this monster. And so can we walk away from that as a country? Is it important? Andrew mentioned we took over a high school in Watts called Locke High School. Locke High School, if you ever seen the movie Training Day, that's the neighborhood. And the Bloods and the Crips were actually founded within 10 blocks of the school. This school opened right after the Watts riots in 1968. The Watts riots in 65, it opened in 68. It was supposed to bring hope to the neighborhood in Los Angeles. What ended up happening is the school became a dumping ground for all the other surrounding schools. If you got in trouble, you got sent to Locke. And the same thing with teachers. If you want to play out your contract, you want to be left alone, go to Locke. And this school, just after we took it over and seized it, and I'll talk about that later, was open for 40 years. So I was thinking one day, What happens if you could get everybody that went to Locke High School together in one area? So about 60,000 people, give or take 2,000 or 3,000, have attended Locke High School in 40 years. So let's say you filled Dodger Stadium with these 60,000 people. And you got on the public address system and you said, attention please, please step out of the stadium if you didn't graduate from Locke High School. 40,000 people would have to leave that stadium. And these are stats that are commonly available. 40,000, so you got 20,000 people where there was 160,000. Then if you got in the PA system and you said, now please step out of the stadium if you didn't get accepted to a four-year university. Well, you got 8,000 out of 60,000. Why is a four-year university important? You make $1 million more of a lifetime. You may have the minimum requirements to come back and teach at Locke. Important stats. 8,000 people now are in the stadium where there was 160,000. Now if you got on the PA system and you said, now please step out of the stadium if you didn't get a diploma from a four-year university. Well, you know only 4% in that neighborhood get the diploma. So now you got 2,200, 2,100 people. One section of Dodger Stadium, the place is completely empty where there was 160,000 people. Now if you got in the PA system and said, how many of you came back to Watts to become a teacher, to start a business, be politically active, work in the neighborhood? Well, none of them. None of them. Now the problem is, what government program, what nonprofit, what good clergy work, what gang intervention program, what box store moving into that neighborhood, any of those things can be able to overcome that infrastructural damage to that school? No. The problem with Los Angeles, there's about 30 Locke High Schools now. The problem with this country, there are thousands of Locke High Schools. Every one of your cities that you're from have Locke High Schools. Until we fix this problem, there is no economic recovery. And it's no longer, gee, that's a shame, and you go to these education things and people talking in acronyms and theories, and they start blaming, they get in their tribes, it's the parents, we do too much of that. And then we just all grab our checkbooks and go, Jesus Christ, just give me a private school, you know. And if you look at the private schools, the good news is, the great news about this problem is it's so fixable. The good principal was just here. Sure as hell didn't look like the principal I knew. And there's a lot of people like him out there. There's a lot of successes. In fact, it's so fixable, I had to testify about a month ago in the Under No Child Left Behind rewriting, and I was kind of glib, but I thought it was actually the right one thing to say. The guy said, what's the fastest way we can fix these schools? That one of the congressmen asked. And I said, I've heard Warren Buffett and Jonathan Kozol say the same thing. If you want to fix public education in America, the fastest way is make private schools illegal. Think about that. What would happen if Arnold Schwarzenegger had to send his kids to Locke High School? You know, seriously. I mean, what would happen if Bill Gates had to send their kids to, I mean, good people, right? What would happen? Jesus, I mean, we'd go hire McKinsey or Bain and find out who's doing something and how we scale it up. I mean, and I'm going to the vineyard. Call me when God damn it, you got 2 months to do it. Let's go. And what would they find? So it was the same question I asked when I was thinking about this midlife crisis and what am I going to do with my life and thinking about doing this green dot thing. Well, I went to some of the big, horrible high schools of Los Angeles, and they look like prisons. They really did. And the two groups that were getting screwed by this bad system were the parents/kids and the teachers. Everybody else is doing remarkably well. So then I, after being depressed by that, I go, well, what does 25 grand get you in Los Angeles? There's got to be some nice schools here. There's some pretty rich people here with pretty famous names out there. They're not sending their kids to these schools. So I went to Crossroads and Harvard Westlake and the Brentwood School, and they all had some pretty basic characteristics. You would never send your kid for 25 grand to a school that had 3,000 kids in it, or 2,000 kids, or even 1,000 kids. 300, 400. Why? Because you want your kids to fall through the cracks. For 25 grand, you would never send your kid that had varied expectations based on skin color, shyness. Gee, they don't know a language. What, you know, it's a romantic language, you know, Spanish? That's great for a lot of different things. You can do a lot of things with that as a teacher. You would have high expectations for every kid. And if my kid's behind, get him up to speed. That's why I'm paying you 25 grand. So small, high expectations. College prep, work ready, every kid. Not some kids, every kid. For 25 grand, and this is the key political question of the day that I raised, you would never spend 25 grand if you knew more than half the money didn't make it into the classroom. It went to some office building where a bunch of people walk around in suits, but you can't really explain what they do. You would take your money out of it. You want every dollar in the classroom to have the highest paid teachers and have the best tools, right? Not the best bureaucracy you can buy. Now, Los Angeles, there's 100,000 people that work for the school system. 40,000 of them are teachers. Now, you need a couple principals and some bus drivers, but do you need 60% of your workforce to not be teachers? Would you invest in a product like that? And that's happening everywhere in the country, all these urban core. Those are jobs, my friends on the left, patronage jobs, but they're irrelevant now. And that's a big problem. How do you actually move that adult workforce into something else? And it's painful. Then, for 25 grand, if my kid comes home for 2 weeks without homework, and I think there's something funny going on, and I call the school, I don't get a voicemail. And then I go down to the school, and there's indifference, and I find out you get another voicemail. No, you get a call back that day. You're a client. Accountability. And then for 25 grand, I want to be part of the school's culture, the community. I want to do the bake sales. I want to do all that kind of good stuff. So those basic things, if they work for the richest people, could they work for the poorest people? And that really became the model of these schools. We have now 20 schools, 19 in Los Angeles and 1 in the South Bronx. We serve 8,000 kids. With that model, we go in and there's 70% dropout rates, and we retain and graduate what we think are the same kids with less dollars, 80 to 90% of those same kids. And 3/4 of them go to four-year colleges. So yes, it can happen. I don't do any of that. I just get to talk about it. There's these great teachers, these amazing people that go and do that every day. But we make sure they're taken care of and nurtured. That's my bureaucracy, is our product is these teachers. And so instead of just keep building schools, improving, we've proved the point. You have charter schools that I think at their finest are what are R&D of what a school district could look like. But I'm tired of building charter schools. How do you change the system? We've proven that black and brown kids from the poorest areas can learn when they're treated with respect. We know parents care about their kids when they're engaged. You're not wasting their time when you're actually talking to them and treating them like a client, which is what you're supposed to do. We know these things will work. How do you create a movement nationally? How do you create the politics for it to be right? Now, I look at this crowd, and it reminds me a little bit, there's this great Mexican restaurant in Los Angeles called Lucy's El Adobe, and Lucy is a Buddhist. And so Lucy told me that I was in there one night and puzzled about politics or something, and she said, you know, Steve, the Buddhists say you need two things to make change. You need wisdom, you need method. Wow. Just think about it. Wisdom and method. There's people that are really wise, but they don't know how to use methods. And then politics is filled with unwise people that know how to manipulate. Look at this healthcare debate, right? Right? And so, but if you combine the two, so what Green Dot works is I'm good at method. I'm not a teacher. And the method and how we change these things, and I hope what comes out of this a little bit is to help you think when you go back that this is all of our problem, we need to change it, and how do we do it? When you go back to your homes, think about the Locke High Schools. Let's not wring our hands and shake our heads about it. I went and spoke. We had some budget cuts in LA, and there's a few pockets of public schools in LA where affluent people send their kids, and we had a budget cut, and some teachers got laid off. And I went to this very affluent Palisades, beautiful house with a bunch of movie producers. And I was like, what am I going to talk to these folks about? I mean, about their poor school, which is actually doing really well. I spend my days in Watts. And I thought about it, and this is the message. I said, how many of you have written checks for politicians in the last 5 years? They all raise their hand. We all get hit up, right? Let me do it here. How many people have written checks to politicians the last 5 years? We have a couple of Jehovah's Witnesses in the back. They don't. How many of you hosted events in your house in the last 5 years for politicians? And they all raised their hands. And I said, well, and I have too. I'm not trying to put you all on the spot. But when you have the conversation, you write the checks about public education, what do they say? And I tell you what they say to me is the same thing they've been saying to all of us. It's like they'll throw a glib comment, talk maybe about an after-school program, and pivot and talk about global warming so fast because it's such a hard problem, right? And I said, you know what? I'm not doing it anymore. I'm not writing checks anymore. I'm not participating with people who don't have answers for public education. No more. No more. So this year I wrote a check to Michael Bennett, who's a senator from Colorado, because I can have a real conversation and he has a real vision about public education. And hopefully one of the gubernatorial candidates in California, but we all have to do that now. This problem is because we allow it to happen. We don't think enough that we can actually, and as a country, and you look at all the big problems right now, we've lost our ability as a country to think we can solve big problems. And I'm here to tell you, if a C-average bored high school student from Cupertino become an educational expert and create these schools, we can fix this thing. Because there's a lot smarter people out there that know how to fix these things. But we've got to create the political will. This is not an educational issue. This is a political issue. Just about every issue that faces us today usually comes down to politics and race, right? We have to believe that black and brown kids can learn. And when you see success, when you see a school like that Brooklyn school, that people don't go, well, you know, they got the motivated parents. They got the pick. They're self-selected. So I used to hear this all the time in Los Angeles, and the best part of my job is I get to challenge all my preconditioning. And you can't grow up in this country and not be pretty conditioned about race and how people are. So I go to these schools, and people go, well, Steve, you get these results because you get these great parents. I said, well, you know, 90% of our parents are new Americans, immigrants, mostly illegal. So think about this. So they risked everything in the middle of the night to come here. I can't even imagine a comfort zone being challenged like that, right? They come here and they take jobs that are under the poverty line, nobody else wants to do. That's why we tolerate it, right? They don't have health care. And the only reason why they came here, they didn't come for the ticker tape parades and the warm welcome and the high-end jobs. They did it for their kids. And their one chance for the American dream is the school system, which instead of nurturing that first generation, that we all have our stories of all our families coming here, which is so special, we blunt it. So I said, so of that pick, so we do a lottery of those kids. So what happens? So they got here, and you know that busboy job is just so rewarding at 50 years old that I forgot why I came here. No, everybody cares about their kids. That's why they came here. The African American families and we serve that are pieced together like my family was. They care about their kids. They all do. They may not know how to be involved because schools aren't that democratic. They don't really ask them to be involved. It's kind of a pain in the ass to have parents involved, even though they say it's a good thing, right? They care about the kids. Now, if your only interaction with somebody who looks different from you is the evening news, yeah, that's the 2, 3, or 4% of the people who don't care about their kids. But don't pick a big swath on people because, you know, you don't know them. Sometimes I have friends who will say that to me, and they hire people from the communities that we serve to raise their kids, right? But they're special. I know them. No, we have to have this conversation. In my neighborhood, I want to fix our public schools, but I said, you know, well, we have budget cuts. Guess what? I would bring in some Title I kids to fix, and it's be good for our kids, and you'll get budget. And what, you want to bring in who? These are all people that voted for Obama and have, you know, gave money and all that stuff. I said, but why live in a city if you don't want to be around kids who look different from you? So it's all fixable, but we have to all think differently. We have to all think differently. There's no bigger issue right now, and everybody talks about the civil rights issue and all this stuff. This issue is killing this country, and we need to fix it. We need to fix it now. Thank you.